I stared at the open closet, my heart pounding with a mixture of grief and disbelief. Kayla, my estranged sister, was rummaging through Dad's belongings like a vulture picking at a carcass. The audacity of her actions on the very day we were supposed to be mourning our father's passing left me speechless. "Hey, you too," Kayla said, glancing over her shoulder with a smirk. "What are you doing? Dad's gone, so I just came to get my inheritance." Her casual dismissal of our loss ignited a fury within me. "How dare you?" I spat. "This is Dad's house, not some flea market for you to loot." Kayla rolled her eyes. "Don't get your panties in a twist, sis. I'm just taking what's rightfully mine." "You lost any right to call me sis the day you slept with my husband," I seethed, the memory of her betrayal still fresh and raw. 15 years ago, my life had been a picture of domestic bliss. I was a socially awkward systems engineer, content with my quiet routine, until Paul burst into my world like a whirlwind of energy. His outgoing nature and infectious charm drew me out of my shell, and before long, we were married with 2 beautiful sons. But the idyllic facade crumbled when I discovered evidence of Paul's infidelity, a used condom wrapper carelessly discarded. Confronted, he denied it at first, but Kayla's sly admission revealed the unthinkable truth. My own sister had been the other woman. The divorce that followed was a bitter pill to swallow. With my world shattered, I moved back in with Mom and Dad, relying on their support to rebuild my life as a single mother to my sons, then aged 8 and 5. Mom and Dad had been unwavering pillars, cutting ties with Kayla and her despicable actions. They showered their grandchildren with love, determined to provide the stability we so desperately needed. Now, 15 years later, Dad was gone, taken by cancer after a valiant battle. And on the very day we should have been honoring his memory, Kayla had the gall to show up and desecrate his home with her greed. The nerve of Kayla never ceased to amaze me. Even after all these years, she remained the same selfish leech, taking without a shred of guilt or remorse. I should have seen the signs earlier, but I was too blinded by the illusion of having a loving family. It started small. Kayla crashing at my place for a few days that turned into weeks, helping herself to our food and leaving a trail of mess in her wake. Paul would laugh it off, saying, "That's just how Kayla is." But her freeloading ways soon escalated. She'd show up unannounced, inviting herself to stay indefinitely, even though she had a decent job at the time. Kayla would lounge around our house like it was her personal resort while I worked long hours to support our family. "Why should I waste my money on rent when I can stay here for free?" She'd quip with a sly grin. Paul never saw an issue with it, always making excuses for her behavior. "She's family," he'd say. "We have to help her out." I should have put my foot down, but I was too consumed by keeping our household running smoothly. I wanted to be the perfect wife and mother, so I turned a blind eye to Kayla's transgressions. Looking back, it's clear she was sowing the seeds of betrayal from the start. Her constant presence must have made it all too easy for her and Paul to give in to their sordid desires. "You're delusional," Kayla scoffed, snapping me back to the present. "This is as much my inheritance as it is yours." "After what you did?" I retorted. "You're lucky Mom and Dad didn't disown you completely." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, please, like you're some innocent victim in all this." "If you had been a better wife, Paul wouldn't have strayed." My fists clenched at her audacity to shift the blame. "How dare you? I worked myself to the bone to provide for our family while you just took and took." Kayla shrugged nonchalantly. "Not my fault you were too much of a doormat to stand up for yourself. I wanted to lash out, to make her feel the pain she'd inflicted, but I knew that's what she craved, a reaction, an excuse to play the victim. So I took a deep breath and met her gaze with steely resolve. "Get out," I said firmly, "and don't ever come back." For a split second, I saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes, as if she hadn't expected me to stand my ground, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a sneer. "Whatever, I'll get what's owed to me, one way or another." With that parting threat, she brushed past me, leaving a wake of resentment and unfinished business. I knew this wouldn't be the last I'd hear from her. Kayla was like a persistent stain that just wouldn't wash out, no matter how hard I scrubbed. But I was done being a doormat. If she wanted a fight, I'd give her one, and this time I wouldn't back down. The days following Dad's funeral were a blur of grief and turmoil. Kayla's unwelcome appearance had reignited the smoldering embers of resentment I thought I had long extinguished. Her audacity to stake a claim on Dad's belongings felt like a slap in the face, a betrayal compounded by her past transgressions. I tried to focus on the happier memories, Dad's warm smile, his steadfast support during my darkest days. But Kayla's lingering presence cast a pall over everything, a constant reminder of the pain she had inflicted on our family. It was during one of those restless nights that I made a discovery that would forever shatter what little remained of my trust in Kayla. As I rummaged through the laundry basket, a stark reminder of Paul's infidelity caught my eye. A crumpled condom wrapper. My heart sank as the realization washed over me. Kayla had been staying with us again, taking advantage of our hospitality while carrying on her sordid affair with my husband right under my nose. The anger and hurt I had bottled up for years came rushing forth like a tidal wave. I stormed into the living room where Paul and Kayla were lounging on the couch and flung the damning evidence at their feet. "Explain this," I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. Paul's eyes widened in shock, but Kayla simply rolled her eyes unfazed. "Oh, relax, sis," she drawled. "It's not like you didn't know Paul and I were together." "Don't call me that," I snapped. "You're no sister of mine." Paul held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Jenna, honey, it's not what you think." But I wasn't having any of his lies. "Save it, Paul. I'm done being made a fool of." Kayla let out a derisive snort. "Finally she grows a backbone. About time you stop being such a doormat." Her callous words were like twisting the knife deeper. "How could you, Kayla? He was my husband." "Was being the operative word," she retorted with a smirk. "Face it, sis. You never could satisfy a real man like Paul. He needed someone who could keep up with his needs." Paul shifted uncomfortably but remained silent, unwilling or unable to defend me against Kayla's venom. "You're despicable," I spat. "Both of you. I want you out of my house and out of my life for good." Kayla simply shrugged, unperturbed. "Suit yourself. Just don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made." As she sauntered out, Paul lingered behind, his expression a mixture of guilt and resignation. "Jenna, he began, but I cut him off with a withering glare. "Don't. Just go. I can't even look at you right now." For once he didn't argue, simply nodding and slinking out the door like a kicked puppy. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The scales had fallen from my eyes, and I was finally free of their toxic hold. It would be a long road ahead, rebuilding my life as a single mother with 2 young sons to care for. But at least now, I could do so without the weight of betrayal and lies dragging me down. Kayla and Paul had made their choices, and I was determined to forge a new path, one free from their poisonous influence. Little did I know, our paths would cross again in the most unexpected of ways, reigniting the flames of revenge I thought had long been extinguished. The aftermath of Paul and Kayla's betrayal was like navigating through a minefield of emotions. One moment, I'd be consumed by rage, fantasizing about all the ways I could make them pay for their deceit. The next, I'd be overwhelmed by a profound sense of loss, mourning the life I thought I had. Through it all, my sons were my anchors, their innocent faces a reminder of why I had to stay strong. I couldn't let Kayla and Paul's selfish actions poison the only pure, untainted parts of my life. So with a heavy heart, I packed up what little belongings we had and moved back in with Mom and Dad. They welcomed us with open arms, their unconditional love and support a soothing balm on my wounded soul. "That girl is dead to me," Mom declared, her usual gentle demeanor hardened by Kayla's actions. "How could she do this to her own sister?" Dad simply shook his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of disappointment and sorrow. "I never thought she'd stoop so low." Their unwavering loyalty meant everything to me. While Kayla had torn our family asunder with her selfish desires, Mom and Dad remained steadfastly by my side, determined to help me pick up the pieces. In the months that followed, they showered my sons with affection, doting on them as only grandparents could. They were determined to provide the stability and love that had been ripped away from our lives. "Don't you worry, sweethearts," Mom would coo, enveloping them in her warm embrace. "Grandma and Grandpa are here for you, always." Slowly, gradually, we began to heal. The pain of betrayal never truly went away, but it became more manageable, a dull ache instead of a constant, searing agony. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the structured world of systems and code. It was a welcome escape from the emotional turmoil that still simmered beneath the surface. Years passed, and my sons grew into remarkable young men, their resilience a testament to the strength of our family bond. We had weathered the storm, emerging battered but unbroken. Then, like a cruel twist of fate, Dad was diagnosed with cancer. The news hit us like a ton of bricks, shattering the fragile peace we had so carefully cultivated. Dad, our rock, our unwavering pillar of strength, was now the one in need of support. We rallied around him, Mom, my sons, and I, determined to face this new challenge head-on as a united front. Dad fought valiantly, his indomitable spirit an inspiration to us all. But in the end, the disease proved too formidable a foe. As I held his frail hand in those final moments, his eyes still shone with a fierce love and pride that no illness could ever diminish. "Take care of each other," he whispered, his voice a mere rasp, "and know that I'll always be watching over you." Those were his last words to us, a final message of love and unity that would echo through the years to come. Little did I know, his passing would reignite a long-simmering feud, one that would test the bonds of our family like never before, and thrust me into a reckoning with the demons of my past. 15 years. That's how long it had been since Kayla's betrayal, since the day she shattered our family with her selfish actions. In that time, I had rebuilt my life from the ashes, focusing all my energy on being the best mother I could be to my sons. Now they were grown men, Ethan, 23, and Lucas, 20, both forging their own paths in the world. Ethan had followed in my footsteps, pursuing a career in engineering, while Lucas had taken after Dad, his heart set on running the family farm. As for me, I had found contentment in the simple things, watching my boys grow into remarkable young men, cherishing the moments we shared as a family. The wounds of the past had scabbed over, though the scars remained, a constant reminder of the pain I had endured. Then, like a cruel twist of fate, Dad's battle with cancer came to an end. The days leading up to his passing were a blur of grief and heartache. Mom, ever the pillar of strength, held us together as we kept a vigil by Dad's bedside, cherishing every precious moment we had left with him. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered, his voice barely audible as he gazed at us with eyes filled with love and pride. "You've all grown into such fine young men." Ethan and Lucas exchanged a glance, their eyes glistening with unshed tears. Even in his final moments, Dad was thinking of us, his family. When the end finally came, it was peaceful, Dad slipping away with a serene smile on his face, as if he had glimpsed something beautiful waiting for him on the other side. As we gathered to mourn and celebrate his life, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Dad had lived a full, rich life, surrounded by those he loved most. He had imparted his wisdom, his values, his unwavering spirit onto his grandchildren, ensuring that his legacy would live on long after he was gone. It was during the wake that the first hint of trouble arose. Well, if it isn't the happy little family?" A familiar, grating voice sneered from behind me. I whirled around to find Kayla standing there, her arms folded across her chest, a smirk playing on her lips. And beside her, like a specter from my nightmares, was Paul. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, my hands balling into fists at my sides. Kayla rolled her eyes. "Relax, sis. We're just here to pay our respects." "Don't call me that," I spat. "You lost the right to call me family a long time ago." Paul cleared his throat, his gaze shifting nervously between us. "Jenna, maybe we should take this somewhere more private," but Kayla wasn't having it. "Oh, no. Let's have this out right here in front of everyone. After all, we're just one big, happy family, aren't we?" Her mocking tone was like salt in an open wound, reigniting the fury I thought I had long since extinguished. "You have a lot of nerve showing your faces here," I growled, my voice low and dangerous. Kayla's smirk widened. "What's the matter, sis? Afraid we're going to stake our claim on Dad's inheritance?" And just like that, the pieces fell into place. Of course, that's what this was all about. Money, greed, the same toxic impulses that had driven Kayla's actions all those years ago. I opened my mouth to unleash a scathing retort, but a gentle hand on my shoulder stopped me. I turned to find Mom standing beside me, her eyes filled with a quiet strength and resolve. "Not here," she murmured. "Not today. This is about honoring your father's memory." I wanted to protest, to confront Kayla and Paul head on, but Mom was right. This wasn't the time or the place. So with a curt nod, I turned my back on them, rejoining my sons and the rest of our family. But even as we celebrated Dad's life, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, the opening salvo in a battle that had been brewing for far too long. Little did I know, the true war was still to come, and the stakes were higher than I could ever have imagined. The tension was palpable in the days following Dad's funeral. Kayla and Paul's unexpected appearance had reignited old wounds, their audacity to show their faces a slap in the face to our family's grief. Mom tried to keep the peace, urging us to focus on honoring Dad's memory. But I could see the pain in her eyes, the disappointment that her own daughter could be so callous and selfish. "Don't let them ruin this for us," she pleaded, her voice strained with emotion. "Your father wouldn't have wanted us to dwell on their pettiness." I nodded, forcing a smile for her sake. But deep down I knew this was far from over. Kayla and Paul had made their intentions clear. They were after Dad's inheritance, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. Sure enough, a few days later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Kayla standing on the porch, her arms crossed defiantly. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me without waiting for an invitation. "Make it quick," I replied, my jaw clenched. "I don't have the patience to deal with your games right now." Kayla scoffed. "Games? This is about getting what's rightfully ours." "Yours?" I echoed incredulously. "After everything you've done, you really think you're entitled to anything from Dad?" "He was my father, too, in case you've forgotten," she snapped. "And I deserve my fair share of his estate." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Fair share? You've got to be kidding me." "Jenna, please," Paul interjected, stepping in from behind Kayla. "Let's not make this any harder than it has to be." His pleading tone only served to stoke the flames of my anger. "Harder than it has to be? You two made it hard the moment you betrayed me and this family." Kayla rolled her eyes. "Here we go again, playing the victim card. When are you going to take some responsibility for once in your life?" "Responsibility?" I sputtered. "You're the one who slept with my husband." Details, she waved dismissively. "The point is, we're here to claim what's owed to us. Dad's estate, his assets, everything." I could feel my blood boiling, years of pent-up rage and resentment bubbling to the surface. "Over my dead body." Kayla's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," I growled, taking a step closer. "You're not getting a single cent, not after the way you've treated this family." For a moment, we stood there, locked in a tense standoff, the air thick with hostility. Then, to my surprise, Kayla's expression shifted, a sly smile spreading across her face. "We'll see about that," she said coolly. "I have a few tricks up my sleeve that you might not be aware of." Before I could demand an explanation, she turned on her heel and strode out, Paul trailing behind her like a lost puppy. As the door slammed shut behind them, I felt a chill run down my spine. Kayla's parting words hung in the air like an ominous threat, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. Little did I know, the true war was still to come, and the stakes were higher than I could ever have imagined. Kayla's ominous threat lingered like a dark cloud over the following days. I found myself constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. What did she have planned? What tricks did she think would sway the inheritance in her favor? I confided my concerns to Mom, but she remained steadfast in her resolve. "Don't let her rattle you, dear," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "Your father made his wishes clear long ago." Still, the seeds of doubt had been planted. What if Kayla had found some loophole, some way to manipulate the system to her advantage? She had always been skilled at exploiting weaknesses, at twisting situations to suit her selfish needs. The thought of her weaseling her way into Dad's hard-earned assets made my blood boil. After everything she'd put our family through, she didn't deserve a single cent. It was during one of these restless nights that Mom summoned me to the living room, a solemn expression on her face. "There's something you need to know," she began, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a manila envelope. Dread washed over me as I took a seat beside her, bracing myself for whatever bombshell she was about to drop. "Your father knew this day might come," she continued. "He knew Kayla's greed and entitlement would rear their ugly heads eventually." She handed me the envelope, and I felt my heart skip a beat as I glimpsed the legal documents inside. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom's gaze was steady, her eyes shining with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Your father's final act of love and protection for this family." With trembling hands, I pulled out the papers and began to read. And as the words sank in, I felt a wave of relief and vindication wash over me. Years ago, without any fanfare or announcement, Dad had legally adopted Ethan and Lucas, making them his legal heirs in every sense of the word. "He wanted to ensure you and the boys were taken care of," Mom explained, her voice thick with emotion. "No matter what Kayla tried to pull, she couldn't touch the bulk of his estate." Tears stung my eyes as the weight of Dad's actions hit me. Even from beyond the grave, he was looking out for us, shielding us from Kayla's greed and malice. "That's not all," Mom continued, pulling out another document. "These are records of every penny your father gave Kayla over the years. Money for rent, car payments, living expenses. He kept meticulous track of it all." I scanned the pages, my eyes widening as I tallied up the staggering sums, thousands upon thousands of dollars, all carefully documented. "He always said those were advance payments on her inheritance," Mom said with a wry smile. "By the time he was done, there was hardly anything left for her to claim." A mixture of emotions swirled within me, relief, vindication, and a newfound appreciation for Dad's unwavering love and foresight. He had outmaneuvered Kayla at every turn, ensuring that her selfish desires would never come to fruition. As I clutched the documents to my chest, a sense of calm washed over me. The battle lines had been drawn, and for once, we held the high ground. Kayla thought she had tricks up her sleeve? Well, Dad had been playing the long game all along, and he had emerged victorious. A sly smile tugged at my lips as I imagined the look on Kayla's face when she realized the full extent of Dad's preparations. For once, she wouldn't be the one calling the shots. The war was far from over, but thanks to Dad's careful planning, we finally had the ammunition we needed to fight back. And this time, we wouldn't be taking any prisoners. Armed with Dad's carefully laid plans, I felt a newfound sense of confidence and determination. No longer would I cower in fear of Kayla's manipulations. It was time to take the fight to her. It didn't take long for the opportunity to present itself. A few days later, there was a sharp rap on the door, and I opened it to find Kayla standing on the porch, her arms crossed defiantly. "Well," she demanded, arching an eyebrow, "are you going to let me in, or do we have to do this dance again?" I met her gaze with a steely resolve, unflinching in the face of her bravado. "Actually, I think it's time we had a little chat." Before she could protest, I brushed past her and made my way down the porch steps, gesturing for her to follow. Kayla hesitated for a moment, caught off guard by my sudden assertiveness, before trailing after me with a huff. We stopped in the middle of the yard, the warm afternoon sun beating down on us. I could feel her impatience radiating off her in waves, but I remained calm, composed. "All right, let's hear it," she snapped. "What's so important that you had to drag me out here?" Without a word, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the stack of documents, holding them up for her to see. Kayla's eyes narrowed as she scanned the papers, her bravado faltering for a brief moment. "What is this?" "This," I said, my voice steady and unwavering, "is Dad's final act of love and protection for our family." I proceeded to lay it all out for her. The legal adoption of Ethan and Lucas, the meticulous records of every penny Dad had ever given her, all meticulously documented as an advance on her inheritance. With each revelation, I could see the realization dawning on Kayla's face, her smug confidence crumbling like a house of cards. "You can't be serious," she sputtered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "He can't just cut me out like that." "He didn't cut you out," I corrected her. "He simply ensured that you got exactly what you were owed. Nothing more, nothing less." Kayla's jaw clenched, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the papers in her trembling hands. "This is a mistake, a technicality. I'll contest it, you'll see." I let out a humorless chuckle. "Go ahead and try. Dad covered every base, dotted every I, and crossed every T. You've got nothing." For a moment we stood in tense silence, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. Then, without warning, Kayla's composure snapped. "You think you've won?" she spat, her eyes blazing with fury. "This isn't over, not by a long shot. I'll make sure you and your precious little family pay for this. I shook my head, unfazed by her empty threats. It's over, Kayla. Dad made sure of that. You've lost, again. With a snarl of rage, she whirled around and stormed off, the documents crumpled in her white-knuckled grip. I watched her retreating form with a mixture of satisfaction and pity. For so long, she had held power over me, her selfish actions dictating the course of my life. But not anymore. Dad had seen to that, ensuring that her greed and entitlement would never again cast a shadow over our family. As I turned to head back inside, I couldn't help but smile. Kayla might have thought she had tricks up her sleeve, but Dad had been playing the long game all along. And in the end, his love and foresight had won out over her spite and malice. It was a bittersweet victory, to be sure. But as I looked towards the future, a future where Ethan and Lucas would carry on Dad's legacy, unburdened by Kayla's toxic influence, I knew it was a victory well earned. Kayla and Paul might have stumbled away empty-handed, their dreams of an easy payday dashed. But their true punishment was far more poetic, a life of struggle and unfulfillment, forever haunted by the consequences of their cruelty and entitlement. As for me and my family, we would carry on, unbowed and unbroken, forging our own path towards a brighter tomorrow. The war was finally over, and this time we had emerged victorious.